the Happy Scientist podcast. Each episode is designed to make you more focused, more productive, and more satisfied in the lab. You can find us online at bitesizebio.com/happy scientist. Your hosts are Kenneth Vogt, founder of the executive coaching firm Vera Claritas, and Dr. Nick Oswald, PhD, bioscientist, and founder of Bitesize Bio.
Hello and welcome to the Happy Scientist podcast from Bitesize Bio. If you want to become a happier, healthier, and more productive scientist, you are in the right place. I'm Nick Oswald, the founder of bitesizebio.com, and with me is the driving force of this podcast, Kenneth Vogt, my friend, mentor, and founder of the coaching company Vera Claritas. Today, Ken will be discussing not the Fleetwood Mac song, but something of the same title, How You Can Go Your Own Way. So let's bring in the man himself. How are you today, Ken?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Cool. This notion of going your own way is an interesting one, and for some people, it will actually rub them the wrong way. They've been taught that to be a good little boy, good little girl, they should follow the rules and they should do as they're told. And and part of this is good. Following protocols is useful, solves a lot of problems. There's a lot of benefit to rules, but the fact is that innovation and new discovery almost never come from just following the protocol. They come from breaking out in some way, and sometimes it's breaking out in a very rebellious way. Sometimes it's ignoring the standards and it's thumbing your nose at the rules. So the question is then, how can you go your own way as a scientist and still be happy, still keep your job, and still get along with other people? Because the fact is we need to work together with other people too. But you probably know some people that kind of march to their own drummer, and you like them and you find them interesting and you want to work with them, and they stimulate you to think about new things and to look at things in new ways. That could be you. It doesn't always have to be somebody else. And if you've come up in a very structured fashion, and it's hard not to get all the way to a PhD, boy, you endured a lot of structure. Tell me I'm wrong, Nick. Is that true?
No, you're definitely right there. There is, and that is one of the biggest steps to make, I think, when you step out from the educational side of things into your own playing field, if you like. Is how do you switch from that process-driven mentality into a sort of a more creative, free mentality?
I suspect that many people who are scientists are also musicians, because again, they got put into music classes, and they had to learn piano or violin or whatever they had to learn. Anybody who's played music for a while, there's a point when you start to realize that I can just do what I'm told to do here, or I can do something more interesting, or I can have more fun with it. Yeah, some people are afraid to do that.
I think that's a superb analogy with music as well, and it's underappreciated how that maps onto science, because it is, at some point you have to have the training wheels on, or it's okay to have the training wheels on and to just follow the course in music and in science. In music, if you just follow the rules, then you're not going to be very creative. You may be good, but even if you're playing back someone else's music, your own style is you need to break the rules to make your own style, and
right.
And it's the same in science. But I think that it's a bit underappreciated how much of an art form science is in terms of the creative side of it. There's obviously a process side to it, but as I said, but the creative side to it is you do need to be rebellious. You do need to make your own path, and you might have to make a conscious step out of that. I think some people do.
Right. Well, I think one of the problems that we have is the way we typically use the word science. we juxtaposition it against art. There's either the art of something or the science of something. That is how we use the language. But that's not exactly encompassing all that is science. There's plenty of art in science. And so that's what we're talking about today is how to embrace the artful side of science. Now, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say that one, just if people aren't grasping that, I mean, some people will grasp that, some people might not. If you look at Kary Mullis, the guy who invented PCR, which underpins so much of what is going on in bioscience today, if you look at how he describes how he came up with the idea, it's very artistic, and he has only got to come up with that idea for PCR by allowing his mind to be in a creative mode and not by following the rules. And there's an article I've written on Bitesize about that. It's called The Invention of PCR, I think. You can have a look at how that, and obviously from his artistic burst there was a lot of diligent process layered on top of that, but also a lot of creativity on top of that as well, to make the amazing tools and derivative tools that have come from PCR.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, there you go. There's an actual application of something that is world changing, and it's industry changing, and it can't happen if we just stay in the box. Now, one of the things that is a potential problem here is personality styles. That is, if we're somebody that I'm going to use the word natural personality, but I'm going to shoot that down in a second. But if our natural personality is to be subservient, is to be a follower, is to to listen to authority, breaking out can be hard. And by the way, I'm not telling you any of that is wrong. If that is a natural style for you, if it's a style that's comfortable for you today, you probably learned that style. It isn't, when I say natural, that's really not fair. It didn't come from nature. It came from nurture. It came out of training and out of progressive progressive input that it seemed like this is a good way to go for you. And that's fine. You can use that, but you still can break out sometimes. You don't have to always be that renegade. You don't have to always be a rebel. On the other hand, for some of you, the idea of being a renegade and a rebel doesn't bother you at all. That sounds like, yeah, that feels natural to me. You also learned that, but there are styles here you can use. So one of the things that will be required if you're going to go your own way is that every once in a while, then you're going to have to stand up for yourself. You're going to have to stand up to opposition. And there's a term that gets used for that often. It's to be an alpha personality. And you've probably heard that before, that some people are alphas and some people are betas. And beta is a very pejorative term. You'll hear comedians talk about being betas, and especially guys talking about being alpha. And we often think of it's an alpha male. Well, what's funny about that is this notion of alpha. Where did it come from? Well, it came from a scientist that was studying a pack of wolves. And so now we think, oh yeah, well, alpha wolf. I mean, that's the ultimate pack leader. But here's the thing that's funny about it. The alpha wolf wasn't male. The alpha wolf was female. It was the senior female in the pack. And so this notion that alpha is a masculine thing, it's a male thing, or often it's a pejoratively male thing. It's a toxic male thing. No, it's not. It's a female thing, and it's not toxic. And now that doesn't mean that everybody can't do it, because obviously there's a lot of alpha nature in how men often act in society. And sometimes it's bad, but often it's not bad. It's a good thing when someone takes charge, when somebody says, I'm picking the path. So the notion of being alpha is often about being a leader of others. But the first thing you got to do is be a leader of yourself. So when you decide for yourself, you know what, I'm gonna think a bit outside the box here. I'm gonna investigate in this direction. I'm gonna take a certain path. I'm gonna make the commitment to go down that road. Well, that is kind of an alpha notion. So I'm encouraging you to consider the idea of being alpha, especially if you're female, but even if you're male, because if you've been in a space where you've been treated like you're beta, that you're just a follower, you're just a cog in the wheel. Um, this is an opportunity for you to take charge of something about yourself personally and be more alpha with yourself. Now we've talked about the difference between being controlling and taking charge in a past episode. So this is kind of an application of that. So now if you're going to go your own way, it is going to require you to take some charge for yourself and to choose for yourself. And it doesn't even necessarily mean you have to communicate that out into the world, although it can be useful. You can get more help that way. You can get more people on your side, but you can also get people, aren't on your side. And it might be just they're intellectually not on your side, but they can also become enemies. So, this is something that when you step into, you step into with full knowledge that, okay, I may ruffle some feathers if I start going my own way. And so you're gonna have to take that into consideration. Something to think about then is what I'll call risk management. That is, okay, if I start going my own way, what's going to cost me? What's going to happen? Am I going to miss out on certain opportunities? And that might be true. You might actually retard certain career advancement. And I know that sounds like it might go against the happy scientist notion, but understand short-term impact on your career isn't necessarily bad. You may be sowing seeds for something that will fruit in the future. So it's something it's something you want to do by choice, and you want to do it. You're making a bet, as it were, and hopefully one that's where you know what you've got. This is poker. This isn't some game that's coin flipping. Who knows how it's going to come out? I know I've got a decent hand here, and I'm going to bet big on it. I'm going to risk because I think it's a good risk to take. So that's how you can look at this. One of the things that you may have to look at in yourself when you're considering risk, because some folks are so risk averse, they're so afraid of taking any chances that they might ever lose anything. If you are not willing to lose every once in a while, I promise you're not going to gain much. The big winners took risks. So this comes down then to managing how you feel. So you look at the difference between what your circumstances are and how you feel about them. And because they're not the same thing. And some folks are going to go, well, of course they're the same thing. I wouldn't describe anything inaccurately. It's like, oh, yes, you would. We're humans. We describe things inaccurately all the time. And we watch other people do it all the time. And we watch almost everybody we know do it all the time. So we'd have to be immensely arrogant to think that, well, we're special among this entire breed of 7 billion people, or that we never tell a story about what's going on. We're all telling stories about what's going on all the time. And we got to separate what is actually happening here from how I feel about it. So you see an opportunity for something. You go, we've been investigating in this direction, and I think there's a path here that we could take. And you know what? We're going to have to commit some resources to it. We're going to have to commit some funds to it, some hours to it, some equipment to it. And I can't guarantee that it's going to work, that we're going to get a positive outcome. But I feel strongly that if we don't investigate this, we're going to regret it. That we want to take that chance. We want to go that way. When you describe it that way, you're talking about what is. You're not talking about the story about what is. You're not lamenting On the other side, somebody will, oh, we can't afford to waste resources. Budget's already so tight, and we could lose our funding. And now we're starting to get a story going here. Well, hey, you haven't lost your funding. That hasn't happened, so that's not real yet. Or we could really anger the PI here, and then we're going to all be in trouble. When you start using words like trouble, and then you're starting to tell a story. Now, there's more than just the specifics here, too. That sometimes the things we're worried about have to do with societal norms. That is, there's a culture that already exists. When I say societal norms, I don't necessarily mean the entirety of society, although that might be true. There's a societal norm among scientists in your lab, in your field, in your industry. And often what people will look at there is to think, we should just go along to get along. Why create waves? Why ruffle feathers? And when people ask that question, they ask it often as a rhetorical question, when they should be asking it as an actual question. Why should we ruffle feathers? Why should we take this risk? Because there's an answer to that question. And sometimes the answer is there's very good reasons to take this risk. There's very good reasons to go your own way on this. Now, use that phrase, go your own way, which implies solitude, but it doesn't have to. It could be going our own way. You could take other people along. You can be a cheerleader for a path or for an idea. And so then it's up to you, how far can you go with that? How far outside of normal can you be comfortable? Are you willing to say, hey, we should take a risk here. We should try something new. We should try something that's been tried before and failed, because maybe we can do it better. that whatever the norms are and wherever they come from, norms should be questioned. And I don't mean irreverently necessarily, but just every once in a while, it's good to say, why have we always done it this way? And, there may be answers. Well, this revered person did it this way, or this illustrious group did it this way. Yes. Okay. But why did they do it that way? More than just resting on, well, it's always been that way. You can look outside of that and see what's possible. So my question then is any of this resonating, this idea of breaking out and in fact, either breaking out alone or taking people with you?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of it from the there's two different ways to look at it. Is when it's time, there's an obvious opportunity, in the scientific career to do that, to make your own path, and it's in the structure of the career where you would start your own lab and off you go, and you have to bring your own ideas and everything like that. But even then, you can still be kind of inhibiting your own creativity, your own vibe by playing it safe, which is another way to look at this, I think. But I think that even from the very beginning, even if when you're a PhD student or whatever, you can still appreciate that you have an opinion and trust that. And obviously you can defer to people who are more experienced than you are, or listen to them, but you should always compare that against what you think is right, what your style is, what your approach would be, what your gut feeling is, and so on, and then you turn the volume up on that as you go through your career to a point where you are, you're a bona fide leader, and you're whether you have a boss or not, you're playing to your own tune. You're doing it in your own way, if you like. The other thing that struck me was that that toxicity of that idea of being alpha is, I think it comes from the idea that leadership is a zero-sum thing, where it's like you can only win by someone else losing. And I think that is a lot of the traditional view of an alpha male or an alpha person. I don't know why it's male. Why is it male that's
I don't know how that happened either.
But anyway, but but there's the traditional sort of view of alpha males winning by making other people lose. That's not alpha at all, I would say. But at least there are other ways to be alpha or to be a leader, where it doesn't have to be that other people lose. You can just do it by bringing people along with you. And but I think it's all about having confidence and trust in yourself, and respecting the fact that you have your own tune, and you have your own style, and to let that be expressed.
Right. And not for some of the people in the audience today, some of you are sitting there going, I don't have that. I don't have any convictions about anything in particular. I don't know what I would apply this to. And so for folks in that situation, I would say start looking for things to apply it to. You're going to find some things, and they may be small things. Just it might be I think there's a way to have a better protocol here. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, but just I think we could do this better. But there's other people in the crowd. They've had a notion forever. There's a foundational thing that they know, that they just know, and it's different than they've been taught. And they might have had this since high school, since grade school. They've got a different idea of how to look at the world, and it might not even be fully fleshed out yet. You're still putting meat on the bones with it, but you've got something. And man, we don't want to lose that stuff. I mean, we as the human race, we need people to follow those things down. And we can all look at people in historically who've done exactly that. And now we look back at them with all this respect, but we forget there was a point at the beginning when everybody said, what's wrong with Bob? Why is he on this tear all the time? Well, because he's got a vision, and he's going to go his own way until he gets there, or Sarah, or Bill, or Sam, whoever it may be.
The other angle on this, from a scientific perspective, is that in a way, it's your job as a scientist, it's your responsibility to be alpha, because what I see in science a lot is people who tend to the consensus viewpoint, and that's okay as long as you independently agree with the consensus viewpoint, and not that you're just going along with the consensus viewpoint because someone else said it was the correct conclusion. So I mean, in that sense, every scientist has to be independent and form their opinions independently.
Yeah.
So that's what keeps science right. And if we allow ourselves to just join a crowd of other people who we agree with because we respect who they are, then science gets pulled down all sorts of, and we've seen it historically, in all sorts of cases where the prevailing wind has been wrong, and
right,
and
we get trapped in those eddies. Then.
Yeah, and it's taken someone who can break the mold to realize that, and often they're ridiculed. Until that happens, they have to be quite strong to break out of that. So that's I mean, to me, that underlines it's not just a nice to have; it's really essential that every scientist is as alpha as possible.
Well, in fact, this segues into something that I wanted to bring up next, and you can do better than alpha. You're like, what's better than alpha? There's only betas and alphas, right? It's like, well, somebody's come up with an interesting notion of a thing called the sigma. And a sigma is an alpha with qualities that I'll bet those of you that don't want to be alpha are going to like, because it takes it out of that type A personality, that driving person that has to be in control of everything all the time, and allows them to be more free. Somebody who's sigma is not afraid to take charge, but that's not their objective isn't to be in charge. They're willing to be in charge if that's what it takes to get the job done. But they're also willing to step back and let somebody else be in charge if that's what it takes to get the job done. Sigma people are a lot more, they're a lot more willing to go with the flow as long as their ultimate objective is being served. And they're more flexible. and they don't need as much they don't need as much praise. They don't need people to notice how good they are necessarily. And not that they're against being noticed, but that's not their main driver. They're not doing it so as to be popular or so as to be liked or respected. Those things will come naturally to that person who has more of a Sigma approach, and it gives you more opportunities to stay focused on your objective, which is scientific discovery, hopefully, as opposed to looking good or moving up in your career. Now, not to take away from those sideline things, but we've all seen it. We've seen people that are good scientists, but then they get so hung up on looking good and advancing in the structure that their science starts to suffer. And then we've seen other people that they stick to it. They stay loyal to the main cause, and you know what? They move up too. They do well. And yeah, maybe they don't have as many patents, and maybe they don't have as many papers written, and maybe they're not asked to be speakers at quite so many conferences. But that is not taking away from their career. And that person that wants to be a movie star about it, and they're going to have a very different kind of career. And I know some folks are going to look at that and go, that is the kind of scientific career I want to be. I want to have the movie star kind of career. And I'm not taking away from that. But I am going to submit to you that you could have a better career if you were more focused on the meat of it and saw that as a secondary benefit. Because there are plenty of people out there that are more than adequately popular and more than adequately well known because they have stuck to the meat and potatoes of this, and they weren't pushed into, well, I've got to look good, or I have to be seen at this conference, and I have to be seen in the company of these people because they're popular too. You can get away from all of that and not have to fall into that, and still be able to go your own way, and still be able to reach into these areas where you're really going to get the best part of your career. You're not going to have the highlight of your career come from just following the rules and just going along with the protocol. It won't happen that way.
Yeah, I like the idea of being Sigma, because you've mentioned that to me before. Actually, I've never looked into it very much, so I have to look into it further now. Because I'm definitely a person who likes to play to my own tune, but I always balk at the idea of alpha, because I'm not. To me, the connotation of that is that you're making other people lose,
Right.
and I didn't see the point. And that I don't always have to take the lead, but if it needs to, then I will, and
Right.
and so on. So Sigma makes a lot more sense to me. It seems to me like it's an evolution of over alpha and beta, whereas alpha and beta are kind of two opposite poles of a dysfunction. It seems like, whereas Sigma is kind of, if everyone's Sigma, then it's fine, because you can be in charge or not, and it just depends on what is the best idea, the best thing for the situation.
Exactly.
So
See, that's the thing about being Sigma. In Sigma, you can play the alpha role or the beta role at any given moment without giving yourself up into it. You don't have to be alpha or beta. You're just playing it for right now because it's useful to whatever you're trying to accomplish in the moment.
yeah, because I mean, if you're alpha and you can't come off of that, it's because you're more interested. For me, anyway, is because you're locked up. You're more interested in, or your main thing is to be the alpha person rather than to get the job done in the best way or to get whatever
Right.
outcome. Whereas the Sigma is flexible depending on what is needed, what's the best for everybody in the situation.
Yeah, and it's not just that you're taking one for the team when you're Sigma. When you're Sigma, you're doing things because of your own way. You want your own way to work out, but you're able to see past these sideline issues and not let the sideline issues drive things, and it gives you more freedom. Nick commented that I had recommend you look into Sigma earlier, but Nick recommended something to me here recently. It's an interesting book, and we'll put this in the show notes, by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. It's called Anti-Fragile: Things That Gain from Disorder. What an interesting notion. And it's been a really interesting book to read, and I think it plays well into this notion of going your own way, and it addresses one of the main problems that people will immediately recognize. Well, if I start going my own way, certainly I'm going to get pushback, right? There are going to be people that are going to oppose that. They're going to stand in my way. What do I do? Well, the answer is to be anti-fragile. And like, what is anti-fragile? Well, we know what fragile is. It means that you're easy to break, you're easy to disrupt, you're easy to stop. But as I don't know if it's Mr. or Dr. Taleb points out, we really don't have a word that is the exact opposite of fragile. And that's why he coined the term anti-fragile. The idea of when things, some folks think of what the opposite of fragile is to be robust or resilient. But fragile means that it's easily impacted by outside forces, and being robust or resilient means you're not impacted by outside forces. But anti-fragile means you're strengthened by outside forces, that you need the stressors, that they're actually important. And in fact, for biologists, I think this should be a philosophy that really makes sense, because that's how life itself is. Life is anti-fragile. Life gains from stresses. It's benefited by that. Now, obviously, there's a limit to that, but an example is your bones get stronger if they're under stress. Now, obviously, they can only be stressed so far; they break. But if they never get stressed, they don't get very strong. That's something that's unique to biological things. We don't see that very often in inorganic things. So we want to take full advantage of our organic nature. and this gives us the strength to deal with pushback, because often the way to deal with pushback isn't so much that you need a set method. It's that you just need to be strong enough to face it. That when there is pushback, that you've got enough resolve and enough creativity to be able to handle it. So, I sometimes I look at my own outlines for this stuff and I go, how to deal with pushback. Well, wouldn't it be nice to have a recipe? Well, just do A, B, and C. But that's not how you deal with pushback, because nobody knows for sure how that pushback is going to come, or even if you do, the answer will be, how resilient are you going to be, and how firm can you be, how anti-fragile can you be.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. And one thing that strikes me is if you are afraid, or if you feel repelled from the idea of taking the lead or expressing yourself, and you just want to follow other people, it's probably because you're worried about things going wrong. Mm-hmm. But the whole idea, the anti-fragile idea, is that things go wrong, and things have to go wrong. Mm-hmm. And actually, that it's that whole notion of, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, sort of thing. If you just stay in the box and you don't try other things, you don't do things that might fail, then you're not going to grow, and you'll have less good things happen, I would say.
Sure.
But it's like, if I look at how, for example, I took my own path in Bitesize Bio, starting Bitesize Bio, and I thought, of course, in the beginning, I thought it was going to be a smooth path. And if I look back, it's like, my God, there's so many things went wrong, and I had to fix them, and but it's all the fixing that is the experience now. And that's what's valuable. And in a way, that's what's made it most interesting as well.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that we can do, like, how do you handle pushback? One of the answers to that is get in front of it and sell your vision, as it were. If you can see, well, where are people likely to have a problem with this path I want to take, and you put some thought into that in advance, and you prepare your case. I mean, this is just like you've done many a time. If you've written a paper, if your dissertation, you had to make a case for something. Well, you sold your vision. And maybe you look back at that now and go, well, it wasn't much of a vision. And Nick loves to poke fun at himself because his dissertation was on slime mold. Well, first off, I'd never heard of slime mold before. So I didn't have an opinion on it, but I did know what the word slime meant, and I did know what the word mold meant, and neither one of them was very enticing. But then I actually looked into slime mold, like, golly, this stuff is fascinating. So, you can make a case for just about anything. So the issue then is to bother to make the case. Make sure that you do, make sure that you do that. Make that part of the process of going your own way, where you've internalized that. It just becomes a normal part of how you do things, is that you're always taking it to that next level, and you're always thinking about, how do I make this clear to other people? And you could think of it as selling the idea, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you can also think of it as, how do I excite other people about this? How do I engage them so that they're going to see the same possibilities that I see, that they're going to get excited about the things I've gotten excited about. And so now you're not just going your own way, you're encouraging people to make it our way, not just my way. So that's the idea of going your own way. Anything else you want to add to that, Nick?
No, I just think that, again, I think it's so important for people to realize that, although that a career in science begins by following a leader, it's just so important that at some point we, regardless of what path you take in science, that at some point you come out and start expressing yourself and not just following, because that's for the better of everyone. The more we do it, the more people we can get that are Sigma, the better. That's the way I'm seeing it these days, actually.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned that there are a bunch of videos on YouTube about what Sigma means. Yeah.
Yep.
So something to look at.
Yeah, I'll come up with one and I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay. So you can get those show notes at bitesizebio.com/The Happy Scientist, and go to episode 28. And I got it right this time. And and in there you'll find a link to the Anti-Fragile book, which is well worth a read, and the video that Ken's going to put in about being Sigma, or the concept of being Sigma. So what else does that leave me to say? You can also get more from us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Happy Scientist Club, and check out episodes 1 to 9 of this podcast if you haven't done so. In there, Ken talks about some foundational principles, which I think you'll find really useful. So, Ken, thank you for taking us your own way and helping us to go our own way.
Right, excellent.
Okay. And thanks, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks. Bye.
The Happy Scientist is brought to you by Bitesize Bio, your mentor in the lab. Bitesize Bio features thousands of articles and webinars contributed by hundreds of PhD scientists and scientific companies who freely offer their hard-won wisdom and solutions to the Bitesize Bio community.